Welcome to the Weekend Must Watch on Intercut, the weekly show going through the movies, the TVs, and entertainment that people can't cut away from. I'm your host, Arturo, and every week I'm joined here for this full course meal of movies that we have. It's Zachary Shevik. What's up, Zach?
Yeah, it's gonna be a very full course. Lots to eat. Lots to eat both
And,
metaphorically and literally on Thanksgiving week. I
and
don't know
part
what
one,
I'm
too.
looking forward to more, the movies or the food. Are you a big Thanksgiving food guy? Are you a fan
Look,
of the stuffings and turkeys and all that? Pies?
that's that's my holiday, bro.
Yeah?
Thanksgiving.
Okay.
That's my time of the year. All right. That's what I'm always looking forward to. I think we get the best music around this time. It's fall. It's the best weather around this time. The
hmm
food is what else compares to this food? Candy at Halloween?
Yeah.
Easter? You don't even celebrate. None of us celebrate Easter here, so it's like Thanksgiving hands down is the best one. And then this year, I know you've been really excited because we have soccer now, football.
Oh
People would
yeah.
say
I mean,
all over the place. So I think that's probably been the thing people have been streaming the most.
yeah, that's probably my pick for the week is the World Cup. But yeah, normally we only get Thanksgiving football, and now we got Thanksgiving football and Thanksgiving football. So
Football.
it's
So
gonna
yeah,
be really enjoyable for me at least. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be a pretty jam-packed week. We have a bunch of the movies that have come out this week so far. Obviously, with this upcoming week of movies that starts on a Tuesday, some movies coming out on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's going to be really confusing. But the best part is, if you've been listening to Intercut, you've seen a lot of these upcoming movies, which we're
Yeah.
going to be wrapping up at the end of the new to see for this episode. But we're going to begin with a lot of the films that are out this week in theaters that came out last Friday. We still got a good bunch before we get into the big Thanksgiving weekend, and it's a good mix of stuff that's in theaters, stuff that's at home, stuff that's getting a wide release. So let's jump into what I think is the biggest release of the week that's had people making every food pun possible. The Menu. A movie that Zach was able to catch earlier this year at TIFF. He gave it a recommendation, but he did something that Zach doesn't usually do. He wouldn't tell me a damn thing about this movie. He wouldn't give me an inkling. He wouldn't tell me anything. He's like, just go into it. It's fun. It's good.
Yeah.
I went into this movie only knowing that it was the writers of Succession. So I was like, all right, it's going to be some themes at play here. It pretty much revolves around a bunch of rich people who organize themselves and appear at this island where for $1,250 a head, they get to
Ooh.
eat crazy courses of meals from one of the best chefs possible. Only 12 people can go at a time, and you can't leave until you finished your meal. But there may be something else on the menu that they weren't expecting. The cast, fantastic all around. The script is going to keep you guessing throughout the entire movie. But then I realized that the writers actually write for The Onion, and that's when a lot of what it was going on here actually made a lot of sense to me.
hmm
Zach, you liked it out of Sundance. I don't know if you had the chance to rewatch it, but having sat with it for a while, how's the menu been digested with you?
I think it's settled okay on my stomach, although it's not necessarily the most satisfying of meals. I felt I got a little bit hungry an hour later if we're gonna extend the
That's always the
metaphor a little bit
case.
further. I obviously it's like ripe for making those types of food puns. My rewatch review of the film was that I think like it's got all the right ingredients, but maybe could have used a little bit more time in the oven because there's a, a great cast, a lot of really sharp, funny writing here, a really interesting setting as well in this like high class Michelin star kind of restaurant environment and the world of that like cutthroat kitchen as well, which we've seen elements of in The Bear earlier this year. But I
Yep.
think the movie's ultimate messaging about class and about art maybe feels a little bit muddled by the end. It's not anything that makes me feel like the movie isn't good, just maybe something that kept it from being really great. But there's a lot there, and I think it actually comes together a little bit more cleanly than I expected on my rewatch of it.
Yeah, I feel you. We're gonna be going full spoilers because obviously there's a lot extra to add to this movie. But I think if you've been watching a lot of these movies that are literally eat the rich, this takes the eating element to one degree further than we've seen in other movies. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I agree with you. It's like I feel that the Succession people are better at writing rich people than they are what's supposed to be the working class. And
hmm
in that, I don't think that this is a movie where you're gonna come out. If you haven't seen any movies ever, Sure, you're gonna be coming out of this going like, wow, there's a class systems at play here. But for the most part, I thought it played well as the satire that it's trying to be. I've heard them pitch it as a horror, and that the satire begins once you leave the theater. But um, the ending, while it works as a very entertaining ending to a movie, it did
Hmm.
have me questioning a lot of the people involved within this. But um, for me, when you go into a movie like this, I think you could see it as a metaphor for anything, any business that you're in. You know, it doesn't have to be a
Right.
chef who's at this point in his career. It could be a filmmaker. It could be, any other employee from dance to anything else. But nonetheless, what holds this movie together, besides the twists and turns, is the cast. Ralph Fiennes, I think, is fantastic in this movie. Nicholas Hoult is just so perfect to hate. He just
Hmm.
plays that smug role so well, and yet out of everybody in the menu, I felt like I'd be him sitting there wanting to try every single piece that there
Yeah.
is in store. I don't know if you had
No,
a favorite
I like
character.
taking pictures of my meals. I don't know if
You know,
I should feel
with that
indicted
price, with
necessarily. Yeah,
that price, you
exactly.
have to
My memory's not that good. I can't remember the
easily.
mouth feel of the mignonette without like a little bit of cell phone snap. I really liked Ray Fiennes in this film. I think this is a really fun performance from him. One of the things that I mentioned when I saw it at TIFF is like I love in his performance where like you can kind of see the corners of his mouth turn up in
Yes,
satisfaction
sir.
a couple times. Like it's the most subtle of face movements, but he's an actor who can really pull off stuff like that. And I think he's a character who might have felt a little bit lost for purpose if not given quite such a good performance. So I really liked him. Anya Taylor-Joy is really strong. A solid cast in general. There's a few people in this that it was just kind of cool to see in this kind of movie. Our guy Arturo
Yes,
Castro from
sir.
Broad City has a fun little part in this as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely one of those films that's worth taking the time to go to the movie theater. It's a pretty easy recommendation. I feel like most people would be able to get something from this. It's not like a movie that would be hard to find somebody to go with you to see. So
Yeah.
yeah, I recommend it wholeheartedly.
I recommend it as well. If you're out there for Thanksgiving and this is probably the trailer that intrigues the most people, I think most people will be satisfied, especially after your Thanksgiving meal. Good thriller, great cast, keeps you throughout. And we'll be talking more spoilers, so if you have any theories or any extra bits to add, right after this live stream, we'll be doing an after credits for the menu, because there's a
Awesome.
lot of different things to pull out of there. Everybody
Yeah.
improved in this movie. I didn't realize that.
Hmm.
All of it. Even when someone was filming, everybody in the background had to come in. But Zach, would you be complaining if they were actually serving you Michelin star food for 30 days straight? It is funny,
Oh
right?
yeah. The craft
Condemning the
service
people.
table must have been off the hook for this movie. Oh
Insane. You didn't even need to go to the table. It came to you. It must have been
yeah.
fantastic. So, yeah, the menu where the cast ate more than the people in the menu ate there. But I would highly recommend it.
isn't it
Fun
isn't
movie.
it a bit hypocritical of the movie if that's like only the stuff that the actors ate, meanwhile the gaffers are getting like tasty cakes
Wouldn't
and shit
that
like
be
that?
insane, Zach? So that may be the case, but we'll talk about it in the after credits. But the menu playing in theaters, another one, and this is one that we're gonna have to do in after credits once it comes out even wider.
Yeah.
One of our favorites of the year. I knew
Yeah.
Zach liked it, but I didn't expect myself to fall head over heels for Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans. His newest film, as people have been calling it, the new love letter to cinema. And you know
Hmm.
what? What better love letter to cinema than the guy who literally is synonymous with being one of the greatest directors of all time? This movie hits on all cylinders, not just because it is a Steven Spielberg biopic. I think if you remove him, you still have a movie that has all the tips, tricks, and everything that he brings to the table. It's a story of a young boy who, through his parents' relationship and the turmoils and everything that happens, leads him to becoming not just a filmmaker, the artist. I think a lot of people come into this movie going, "Oh, but if Spielberg didn't make you," and I'm like, "No, no, no, move him away from the equation." The filmmaking in this still stands. It is because it's in the context of it being the story of one of the greatest filmmakers of all time that it pushes it to honestly, no, forget a 5 out of 5, a 6 out of 5. This movie is something special. This is the film we've been waiting for. Zach was asking me what I thought about this ending. A lot of people have spoiled this ending for me that came out of
Ooh.
TIFF. Yeah, and be careful out there because I think it delivers. Just the way it's set up, all of it. This is the ending we've been waiting for Steven Spielberg to do in such a long time throughout all of the 2010s. Zach, you and I have come on this podcast like many others on their podcasts or articles or whatever it is going, oh, the was it the Big Green Giant, whatever that was, Ready Player One, all of these movies that he's come up with that people go, is this the time where Spielberg goes back to being Spielberg? You and I have always said, not really. This is the one.
Yeah, this is really like one of the great Spielberg films. I think you can put it up there in the canon with some of his best work. It may be his best work since films like Munich. And I'm saying this as somebody who really did love West Side Story. I thought that was like a pretty special musical and pretty beautifully made. But this is better than that, and I think it has a lot of. I think it has a lot of the best qualities that I loved about West Side Story. You find them here too, because Kaminsky is doing some Kaminsky things. Just my boy Janusz really, really loving putting together beautiful shots for no reason whatsoever. Just the amount of oneers that don't call attention to themselves, but start in a beautiful place and then end in a more beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody doing it like them, and it's so thrilling to see that level of craft given to something that maybe doesn't normally get that level of craft. I think there's a general type of malaise among film goers when it comes to these like personal coming of age, self-reflection types of stories. I'm seeing a lot of sentiments like, oh, another filmmaker reminding us about the power of cinema. Stop it. It's not the same. He has a power that is way beyond what most people can do in how you put these things together. And one of the things that I was really struck by on my rewatch of it is that the main complaint I've seen people have of the movie is that it feels kind of episodic, that it's like it's kind of start and stop. And when you actually know what's going on and you see the little things being planted and the little bridges that are so subtly being laid that you don't see them being laid in front of you, he's just a guy working on a different level. It's an amazing script, one of the best scripts he's had in a while. I wish he would write more because there are just banger line after banger line.
This is the first one. What's the stat?
Since like 1984, was it? Do you have it? I don't.
I think it was like AI that was the last script he had written.
It's incredible.
Crazy.
Yeah. And it's so much more than him telling his own life story. He's talking about the ways in which film he's talking about film as a conduit to learning about life. And I think it's so well done. Yeah, it's easily one of the movies of the year. Best final shot of a movie this year for sure.
Easily. It's so good that I think it's throwing people in a loop because they don't realize it comes off so simplistic. And it's in that simplicity that people don't know what to do. They think it comes off a little too like, that's it, it's by the numbers or whatnot. But it's in those extra details that he has in there that I think make it really profound. The different conversations that he has with his different family members, what everyone has to play with it, and how art ends up becoming like you called it, a conduit, in a sense, his escape. I thought it was profound. And look, I give it a 5 out of 5, but I'm here to tell you, this little kid right here, he sucked. This little kid right here was terrible, bro. But he was a perfect prop to be the young Spielberg and what he was supposed to be with his piercing eyes. But yeah, look, the movie's going to have those little moments like that, but it's the emotion that I haven't felt in a Steven Spielberg movie to this level in such a long time. Everything that he's orchestrated throughout his career, this is the inspiration for all of that. There are some shots that he showcases in this movie, and you're looking at it and you're like, wait, is this the inception to the original shot? Alina's take coming out of this was every single Spielberg review is, oh, it's just Spielberg doing Spielberg. So this is Spielberg taking that and doing Spielberg, doing Spielberg, doing Spielberg.
Yeah.
Knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, this little boy that you're mentioning, like I feel he's mainly casting him for his blue eyes, because when we get to the 16-year-old Sammy, he no longer has blue eyes for some reason either. But
like
man,
contacts on or something, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about though? When I mentioned there's that shot of the train coming towards his face, yes. And from that moment, I knew we were in the right hands. Yes. I knew it's so good.
That he was just going to take it to the next level. There's a lot more to discuss. This scene right here is one of my favorites. I know that there's a lot of debate on the approach of what he takes with his mother. It's a big relationship movie in terms of
Yeah, we'll get more into
him
that on
him and his
after credits
parents,
for sure.
and we'll have to get more into that. But I want to say that a lot of people who have come out of it, I've seen them give like a, I did not like Michelle Williams' character, and then I see people watch it again and they go, "Oh, it's all about that." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Yes." So I
yeah,
would just implore you. I don't see people getting disappointed in I can't fathom being disappointed in the movie or being bored in the movie, but I can't see people going like, "Really? Is this the best of the year?" And I'd say give it another watch. It's getting away with its simplicity, but it's in those little minute moments that it packs so much freaking heart. Alina and I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning talking about it, and that's why I had to give it the 5 star
yeah,
review after we finished
yeah.
our rant. Whenever I post that letterbox review, yeah, that was just know that that was after like 2 hours, 3 hours of just discussing every little nook and cranny and what it builds up to. I cannot wait to talk spoilers with you, Zach. We have a lot of clips for this movie that are out there,
Yes.
and please watch it in theaters when it comes out. Highly, highly recommend going out for it. This is my best picture front runner until we watch Avatar and Bardo, I think, are the last two.
Woo.
This is the one I'm rooting for the most. I don't think it's gonna be everyone's favorite movie. I'm not even claiming it's the best movie of the year.
Yeah.
It's my favorite movie. I can't wait to watch it again. I want to take my whole family to see it.
Oh man, I'm excited for more people to see it too. Devesh in the live stream comments is mentioning that despite its nationwide rollout, it looks like it's still in only about 100 screens. So yeah, I mean it'll be expanding hopefully more and more as more people get to see it. But this is really one of the special movies of the year. This is one of those run don't walk to the theater kind of movies, to not to sound cliched, but it's so good. It's the kind of movie that a movie lover will feel heartened by, will feel enlivened by, will feel reborn by, and it's just it's one of those films that you leave the theater and kind of feel like you're walking on a cloud because it's really just something magical.
I'm doubling up on that ending too. If you don't like that ending, you've stopped being that child. You've stopped having that childlike wonder. I hope people don't lose that. I think that's him going back to his childlike wonder. It's one of the best endings. It's fantastic. It's beautiful.
It's
Fablemans,
so
high,
good.
high, high combo price for me.
I was also going to say there's two things that I really wanted to I knew you would love in the film: the ending and the moment with the holes.
Stop, bro. Don't say no more. Don't say no more. Don't say anything else. Yes.
Oh, so good.
100%. Michelle Williams for supporting, Paul Dano for supporting, Steven Spielberg for director, Tony Kushner for writing, and who am I missing?
Some people got my man. Oh, Janusz absolutely for cinematography. I personally love the Judd Hirsch role. It might be a little bit too small.
Small. It's too small.
Yeah.
He is the heart of the movie. I saw some people not paying attention to that scene. That's the whole movie.
That's the whole movie. Yeah.
A lot of you all saying that it's him doing his film thing. No, you did not listen to the Herschel bit. Very good, very good, very good.
Yeah.
Fabelmans, highly recommended. Another quick one. We've discussed this one over as a part of New York Film Festival. A movie called EO that just follows this donkey. And it just follows this donkey. I'm looking forward to this one being one of the short-listed films for the end of the year. But Zach, we had an update. We were outside of this theater when I said, I wonder what EO stands for. And out of my mind, I said, it's a donkey movie. It's EO. It must be the noise that a donkey makes. Boy, was I struck down right before we entered this movie. We're out in public. Like, it could never be. Zach, what did we figure out?
Apparently, this is what Jerzy Skolomansky, I can't pronounce the name without looking at it. It's by being Polish. It's like one of those Polish names that has like 3 consonants in a row. Yeah, I need to look at it.
Well, Jerzy, I saw you, man. I knew exactly what you were going for, and I got it the moment you went for it. Skolomansky, I'm with you, bro. I knew what you were aiming for. Yeah, he came out.
That's not what a donkey sounds like, though. Donkeys don't sound like EO.
You need to spend more time with donkeys, bro. I already told you, it's EO, okay? You had me doing it outside of the thing. And I'm glad I've been justified. EO, based after the sound that a donkey makes, like I said, is out in limited release. This is a movie I would highly recommend catching as a matinee because it's beautifully shot in this like little boxy ratio. You're literally just following this dog. Like if you have a pet, you're going to look at this animal's eyes and be like, yeah, I can see the humanity in there.
Yeah.
We've said if you're fans of Gunda, if you're fans of Andrea Arnold's Cow, this will be up there.
Okja.
My best. Okja's the best example, actually. Um, yeah, Donkey of the Year, in my opinion. I know Zach still is rooting for Jenny,
I
but
got Jenny. Do you have your list updated? Because I know there's like a lot of contenders for best donkey of 2022, best film donkey of
yeah,
2022.
I'm still EO. Then I'm going to Donkey from Return to Dust, and then I'm going Jenny. Jenny was a good donkey. Don't get me wrong. You
Jenny's a
still need
very
to see
cute
Return.
donkey. I still
And
need to see Return. Yeah.
until we get a cameo in Puss in Boots, then I'll have to rearrange
Right.
my donkey performances. But
Yeah.
overall, one
We'll
of the
do the top five later this year.
top five donkeys later this year. But EO, if you have the chance to catch it, it is out in theaters right now, limited release, as well as another movie that you can't catch in theaters before it hits Netflix. And I would personally give it the rating of almost a combo price, but it's a family movie. Take your kids early to go see Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. We had an earlier one this year from Disney. Came straight to Disney Plus from Zemeckis of all people, a really great director, and I absolutely hated that movie. It was atrocious. This this is magic, bro. This is wonder right here. This isn't
Oh
trying to
man.
reinvent the wheel. It's just a better design, my G. This is exactly what you need it to be. I've seen you shared a couple of the stop motion behind the scenes stuff that they've done for
Yeah.
this movie.
Which I will always do. They're always so cool to see those video montages of putting together the stop motion.
Oh, it's beautiful, and it is worth catching on the big screen for that alone. There is some just insane details in this movie, the lighting, the textures, the voice acting from everyone around. This is the cricket is played by um, oh, why am I blanking on him? Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. He comes in to do the voice, and I thought he did a fantastic job
Ewan?
in. Yeah, he's the voice, and
Oh,
he is not. Yeah, I don't think he's distracting at all. I think he adds a lot to his performance. He had a lot of really funny quips here and there. Gets to sing a little bit, and just overall, the tone of the movie is it's perfect. This is exactly like if I had children, this is the movie I want to go take them to see.
okay.
I don't know if it's at my top, but it's definitely in my top five animated films of the year. Turning Red, and I'm blinking on some other ones that might still be fighting for the top spot. But this is one that I know they just sent us the screener links for, and I don't
Mhm.
regret having gone to the theater to go see it. I would, if I had it
Very
there and I
cool.
still had another screen to go to, that's where I would go experience it as well. I know you haven't caught this yet. We'll be talking about it more next week, but definitely put
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio on your radar.
Yeah. Very cool. And I'm glad that at least one of the Pinocchio movies this year is decent.
One of them was bound to be, right? Just has to.
Yeah.
What wasn't decent, at least for me, was
Uh
this
oh.
Enchanted.
Yeah.
Zach, what'd you
Yeah.
think?
You know, I think we both are pretty big fans of the original. It's like very
Huge.
charming and very fun, and Amy Adams in particular is so vivacious and such a just breath of fresh air in that film. And I think where I come down on Disenchanted is like when we got Enchanted, the whole idea of sort of like a subversive kind of meta look at like a fairy tale or like princessy kind of environment was fresh. It was new.
Novel. Yeah.
It hadn't really been done. Just in the last couple of months, we've had the princess, we've had Rosaline, we've had Catherine called Birdie. Like it's just
Yeah.
entering into a world where that tone isn't special anymore. And if the tone is really the only thing that separates you from the rest of the movie world, I don't know. There's not a lot going on there. There may be maybe a couple moments, a couple quick jokes here and there that I chuckled at. But whatever humor they did try to inject into this thing is a lot more base, a lot less surprising than it was in the
Yeah.
original. And
Yeah.
it feels very Disney Plus. I don't know how else to really put it. That difference
Yeah.
between a theatrical release and a direct to streaming release, it's very evident in the ways that it feels like Disenchanted cut corners.
And it shouldn't be. I love the first one because you could definitely see that the filmmakers came in and had like an obsession with the Disney classics and put them into play. And I agree that novelty it wears off over time when you're making a follow up. It reminds me of Scream in the sense that it's like it's coming in to do something new, but it's like the first one was able to reinvent something. You're just following the same thing again, and not even with something better. Uh, I don't think it's a terrible story. I think it's something that it's an interesting play on having her become the evil stepmother. I thought that Maya Rudolph comes in and she does a pretty decent job trying to be the villain in this movie. Uh, but we've built this pocket of these overly expensive straight to streaming movies. So yeah, bring it up, bring up the news. What had to happen with this week because of the way that they've been rolling this stuff out.
Yeah, so I kind of on the subject of Disney, they've changed their CEO again. Bob Iger is
Again,
back.
well,
Bob
reverted.
Chapek Bob Chapek is out. Yeah, no, I mean Bob Iger, after delaying his retirement for years and pushing the can down the road of bringing Bob
Brett Favre
Chapek
did.
in. Yeah, he after taking I think like 2 years away, he's back in the chair, running Disney. I don't know if we have like the most insights on CEO maneuverings. We tend to keep it to the content, but how do you feel at
Yeah,
least about
I
the
don't,
decision here from Disney?
I don't know. It's weird, bro. It's like they've known. I don't know. It feels like they brought the other Bob because they're both Bobs, right? They're both
They're
Bobbers,
not
and
only are
one
they
of them,
both Bobs, they're
Alan.
both
I
Robert
heard.
Allens. Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. I think Chapman was the other one. I think he was
Chapek.
Chapek
Yeah.
was
Chapek.
created in a lab because they needed someone to take the bullet for whatever they did
Mhm.
these last 2 years, right? And now the other boy is back. So I don't know what maneuvering they had behind the scenes. Sounds like they needed a fall guy of some sort. We'll see how it affects everything that's out there, or how they continue maneuvering and balancing their theatricals to TV. Because even some of the stuff, Strange World, that's coming out, that's gonna bomb, bro. I don't know how else to tell it to you. I've seen
Yeah.
it.
We both
I
seen
don't
it.
think it's got the I don't think it's got the quality, but I also don't think it's got the distribution to it because why catch it in theaters on Thanksgiving with everything else out when it's going to be on Disney Plus
Yeah, that's one of
by
the things
Christmas?
that I think has maybe influenced Bob Chapek leaving is that they've bungled so many of their releases over the past year or two to the point where I was
It's
surprised
ridiculous.
to learn that Strange World was going theatrical and not straight to Disney Plus. And
You
I
know?
think it's things like that where they've greenlit a lot of expensive projects that haven't hit. They've failed to sort of connect the projects that are hitting to an audience. Look at Andor right now, which seems to be kind of like the thing that a lot of Star Wars fans have been
Been
hoping to
waiting.
see. It's not trending on Twitter the same way that Mandalorian or Kenobi were. It's like there's just sort of like a lack of really getting the best out of the product over the past couple of years. And I know the theme park people are really upset with a lot of the decisions JPEG has put in as well. It's just, you know, getting to the point where I think Disney has upset so many of its most loyal supporters that they
Hmm.
need to at least show that they're doing something different. And bringing back Iger is kind of
Different,
like the
exactly.
safest thing. It's the safest thing because it's like, oh no, you like this guy, right? This
Nostalgia.
guy was pretty
Nostalgia
good.
even with the CEOs. That's bad, bro. We're screwed.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, speaking of people who could distribute movies, I've still yet to catch this one, but that's because it wasn't in my top box office. I only watch the stuff that's in the top box office, Zach.
Right.
Let the people know if they should be leaving the theaters to go support the movie that needs the most support out there, she said.
I mean, I think that it's not necessarily something you need to rush out and see. There are certainly some people who will find a story like this appealing, and I
Hmm.
think those people are the ones who probably went out and saw it, because there weren't a lot of other people, as we mentioned. But it's a kind of movie that I don't know if it's gonna be like the Friday night entertainment. This is a little bit more of like it's a little bit more homework, and homework is maybe not the nicest thing to say about a film that's very well made and very effective in terms of communicating the emotional turmoil that was caused by all the Harvey Weinstein scandals. But it, it's just like I think the film is such a literal adaptation of the investigation into Harvey Weinstein that they don't really give you a little bit more meat on the bone. There's not enough of the Megan Twohey or Jodie Cantor characters characters played by Zoe Kazan and Carey Mulligan to feel like you really connect with either of them. There's not necessarily enough of the investigation. Even it just sort of it's doing um, All the President's Men cosplay well, but it's still kind of like working in that shadow and not kind of doing its own thing. And I don't know. I think it's effective. I don't want to undersell the film too much because it's a good movie, but it's not. Especially when we talk about how many great movies are out right now, it's not one of the must sees. I think in
I
theaters.
feel you. If you check, see, we got on the chat a little cracking on the mic. We'll try to get that fixed in a little
Okay.
bit. But I did have a question in terms of talking about Bob Chapek's removal and this idea of how to manage a movie and releasing it. I don't know if you got to see the Hollywood Reporter article out there, but to recap it for some of the people, there was an article out there dealing with the Hollywood Reporter really coming at this movie for its box office, which to me is some of the goofiest reporting possible. No one's expecting this to do Marvel numbers, right? Second to that was this idea of one of the Hollywood Reporter writers decided to like quote tweet and say, if only there was a guy who the movie wasn't trying to get at, who knew how to market independent movies, and that had to be one of the dumbest tweets of the week. But I have to ask you, in a world where, like you said, you have all of these releases out, would this have done better not going to theaters and playing the VOD market?
Well, that's a question. That's a hard question to answer, right? Because it might be even harder to get people to plunk down, $7.99 on a film that hasn't even had like a solid theatrical run to build hype. I think where maybe this movie would have worked best is like on a Hulu, which does a lot of these movies about stories that were ripped from the headlines. Stuff like Dope Sick, which does really well on Hulu.
Yeah. The
Um,
Assistant, when that premiered on Hulu,
yeah,
which
right.
would you say The Assistant is a better version of this in terms of covering the case?
I would too, in that I like the Assistant's approach more, but the Assistant is a fictional story, and this is
Yeah.
trying to tell you the true story. I prefer the more artistic rendering in the Assistant. Like it's also the fact that this stuff happened so recently that there's no like real mystery or surprise in the film. It kind of just it feels like being told the story that you were already told a couple of years ago. And I think that's also part of what removes the sense of urgency that a movie like She Said could really use.
I feel you. All right. Well, it is in theaters. We'll see how it does. We'll see how it flips over. But do you see this being something that's going to carry to award season?
Um, I mean, I think it might get a couple slots. I could see it picking up a Best Adapted Screenplay award for being adapted from the book, although I don't think the screenplay is necessarily one of its best features. I think there's some hype around Carey Mulligan potentially getting in supporting actress. I could see that because she's pretty solid in the film. It's not going to be a major awards player, and I think at this point I would be a little bit surprised if it cracked the 10 Best Picture slots.
Mhm. Well, I will say that we have another movie on this radar that is not by the numbers in any way, shape, or form. A Netflix release that may have had a theatrical run in some places. I know it played at some festivals. The Wonder. Florence Pugh's, I want to say call it a Western, but drama mystery about a girl who has not eaten in weeks, months, and they're trying to figure out what in the world is going on here as they attribute it as a miracle from God. I think it is one of the most beautifully shot films. In my opinion, this should be up there as a contender for cinematography, and that's because it comes from a girl, Ari Wegner, who did Power of the Dog, one of the best shot movies of last year. And I believe this may be based off of a book, but I would say that even the script writing deserves something here. Florence Pugh always delivers a great performance, in my opinion, and here she appears as I want to say a nurse who's coming in with a nun in order to investigate this family. And there was a tweet earlier this week that kind of spoiled the opening frame, and I found that so interesting, especially with all the LME days, realizing what footage you can or cannot show. And this tweet kind of spoils like the opening frame in the movie that I think is a really cool opening frame. But in that,
Yeah.
it got a lot of people to watch the movie. And I don't know if you saw people like Barry Jenkins were sharing this tweet, and everyone was like showcasing. And this tweet is literally every frame of the movie about how beautiful it looks. And a lot of directors participated in sharing it because it turns out that in showing you some of the movie, you can almost sell it a lot more. And it went trending. And I think this is a movie that, if it would have played in theaters, I don't know if it would have entered the top 10 like it was able to enter the top 10 in Netflix. So
Right.
here's what I'm speaking of in terms of counter, it's not even counter programming, counter releasing, figuring out where is the best platform to release it in. If you know that there's going to be too many people in theaters, would they stay at home to watch something? And I think The Wonder definitely um, excelled in being that. Uh, Ari Wegner, Netflix, November 16th. That's her date, just like last year with Power of the Dog. I want to see her. I want to see her get a
She got it
nomination for
on
this,
lock.
and yeah. I think she should continue to get recognition for that. But Sebastian Leo, also a really good director. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I liked The Wonder quite a bit. I mean, yeah, I liked it good. I think in the beginning, there's like a coldness to the film that's very intentional. Florence Pugh's character is like very feels like she's sort of cut off from other people, at least
Mm,
emotionally. And then I think when the movie starts to reveal itself, it becomes about something a little bit more disturbed than I was expecting, and that really intrigued me. So the latter half of the film really grabbed me.
yeah,
Um,
it's a good script.
yeah, very good script.
Again, it is on Netflix, so you don't even have to leave your house to see one of the best movies of the year. But the cinematography is worth catching it. Out in theaters is a matinee if you do get the chance to do so.
Yeah.
Wrapping up a lot of little quick ones that we have here. There was this movie called The People We Hate at the Wedding. It's on Prime.
Yeah.
You got a family who's so dysfunctional. They don't really want to get together, but they're forced to. This is the epitome of a movie where it has some funny jokes. I will never, to me, comedy is comedy. But
Mhm.
damn, do unlikable characters. They could really ruin a movie, Zach, and this is the
Mhm.
epitome of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those films, even that title, The People We Hate at the Wedding, like you want to kind of relate or at least empathize with their behavior, but they are constantly complaining but being the bigger problems themselves. And I-
Yes.
there are moments certainly where Kristen Bell and Ben Platt are quite funny. I actually haven't really seen Ben Platt in this mode, so it was funny to see him kind of a little bit more I don't know, a little bit more snarky. At least I liked that, but
What I caught was him playing his age.
right, for once.
But yeah, like it
But
just doesn't hit. I would recommend a show
yeah,
like the other two. It's just like these
absolutely.
characters. They are unlikable. They make their own mistakes, but they don't cross that line where they're just like irritating to watch. And I
Yeah,
think that that's the
complaining
balance in a
constantly.
movie. Yeah. So I don't know. This is on Prime. I would not recommend it. There are a couple of okay jokes in here, but
It's
I worry
also
that this is where rated R comedies are going to end up at.
yeah. It's also one of those movies where it's like, oh, our mom was always so horrible to us, and then they learn that the mom wasn't so horrible to them, except that the mom
Yeah.
was never really horrible to them in the first place. So what's the point of making that part of the
What's the
story?
point?
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're curious to catch it, none of you know that this is out on Prime, but it is a whole movie with real actors out on Prime.
Yeah.
Another one that has a really big star that's over on Netflix. I haven't had the chance to catch it, but Zach, tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about Slumberland.
Slumberland is pretty interesting, more so than I expected, at least given that it's got this kind of like weird Netflix digital fantasy sheen that I don't think
Mm,
looks that great. But it's about this young girl who discovers a secret dream world where she can hop between dreams and uncover lost treasures and stuff like that. And she's guided through this dream world by a horned Jason Momoa as Flip. And I think Jason Momoa in this movie is like every 8-year-old's idea of the coolest person on the planet. Like he's just this like wisecracking, laid back pirate of sorts with a cool outfit. And to me, like my at least abbreviated thoughts on this movie is it's kind of like Kids Bop Inception. It's got that whole like dream within a dream layers
Okay.
of diving through for your adventure, but it's simplified and made kind of like squeaky and cute for Slumberland. I dug this one. I think if I caught this at a younger age, I would have felt very transported. I would have felt like this was one of the most imaginative movies I'd ever seen. It's not, and I didn't find it to be too grating even as an adult either. There's some good performances here. Kyle Chandler has a small part in the film. Chris O'Dowd was also pretty good in the movie. I think it's a good time, especially if you are looking for something to watch with a younger person. It's a great pick.
Interesting. All right.
I would go to a movie
Slumberland.
theater for it.
Ooh, well, you don't have to
Not by
'cause it's
myself though.
available.
Not by myself.
Not by-
Yeah.
with the little like doll that she's got in the movie. Well, it's out on Netflix. Watch it amongst all of the Christmas releases from this week. This was probably, I don't even know if it's Christmas related, but out of all
No.
the stuff that came out this week, this probably would have been the one that I would have caught if I did. But instead I saw Blue's Big City Adventure over on Paramount Plus. The return
What are you doing to me,
of
man?
Blue going to the big city. Hey, Zach, look. If we're paying for Paramount Plus, we need some sort of content, right? I don't know about you. I grew up watching Blue's Clues. That's Alina's
Yeah.
things. We both had the officially licensed merchandise with the little notepad, the salt and pepper. We love Blue's Clues.
I didn't have all that.
Oh, we went all out, bro. Uh,
I feel like when I was watching Blue's Clues was around the time when I was still watching Nickelodeon like all the time, but I kind of knew I was too old for some of it. But I watched
Yeah.
plenty of Blue's Clues.
I got you. I think I was 18.
Steve
But
era.
this new one that's come out, yeah, the Steve era is undefeated. But here you have
Yeah.
Blue going to the big city, and it's not great. But in being the Blue's Clues story that you want it to be, there are little pockets that it's able to hit that are kind of cute. I don't have a problem with the new guy who they've had. I know that he's been doing a lot of the new Blue's Clues episodes as well. But
Yeah,
honestly, like
Josh.
watching a lot of this, you know that they're hyping it up to be, a feature-length film. But going back to the old episodes, bro, like it was different times. Like they were just invigorating. It allows you as a child to like learn things. It makes you feel comfortable, safe, imaginative. Like Blue's Clues, I think, is a reason for a lot of the, I don't know, creative decisions I may be making with my life today. So seeing that it's still around, maybe not to the biggest effect as it was before, is interesting to see. But
Yeah.
at least it's no Clifford. I'll give it that.
Yeah, it's definitely better than that. And yeah, it wasn't the most painful thing. I appreciated that they made Steve a detective. Like that's a
Yes.
clever. You're like, oh yeah, we're always into finding clues. And then they go to Donovan and he's like, oh, he just has a store. Didn't find anything clever for him. What's up with all the cameos in this movie, man? There's Taboo
Yeah.
shows up.
They-
Alex Winter is a cab driver for some reason in a weird like almost ode to Bohemian Rhapsody, I guess.
I'm not even sure who it's for because it's not like it's for the old
Wainsworth?
fans. The new fans definitely aren't gonna get it, but I don't know. Maybe some Paramount stuff that they needed to get done, some checks that they owed
Yeah.
for cameos, appearances. But hey, it's playing on Paramount Plus. They've had a lot of movies, like what's the dog one where they're cops? The Paw Patrol.
Paw Patrol.
That had a same day and
Big
date
hit
release.
Paramount Plus.
Yeah, so now they got another one to add to the repertoire. But putting that on the radar for those who love Blue's Clues. You got a new movie out in the comfort of your own home.
They had my man Josh in the ugliest suit at the end of that movie, though, like a black
Yeah.
suit with like blue rhinestone trim. Something
It's not.
yeah, kind of disgusting.
But shout out Steve. Steve's one of those like unproblematic people who we've had a long time. Who was a part of our childhood. Who you don't grow up and go like, damn, you turned into whatever Disney star
Right.
has turned
Yeah,
into.
all
Like,
the-
yeah, he's been consistent.
Yeah, all the like he got addicted to heroin rumors were just rumors, right? I think so.
I hope so, bro.
Yeah.
I'm standing and putting it officially on this podcast as lore. Yes, he is clean as can be. Maybe some salt and pepper, but nothing too much. A quick rundown on the docs. Stutz was a documentary that came out on Netflix. It is directed by Jonah Hill, and it is a documentary on his therapist. I think it's a very interesting look at the advice that his therapist has given him. He's one of those therapists that doesn't believe that you go in there for him to listen to you, then you go back home and your friends give you the advice. And while it's interesting, it's an interesting profile of him. Half of it is Jonah Hill realizing he's making a documentary and going like, "Oh, this is what a documentary is," and it ends up becoming a film therapy session for Jonah Hill. I liked it. I think it's an interesting watch. I think he's a very interesting figure, and it's because of Jonah Hill being such a prolific star that we're able to almost do the therapy session with him because we know so much of
Right.
his life. So I want Zach to catch this one. I'm curious to know your thoughts on
Yeah.
this. It's on Netflix, so
Yeah, I'm
very,
very, very
very
curious about it.
accessible. One that Zach did see last week, so I'm going to keep it brief. Everything Zach said about this one is correct. This is a knockout. It's a standout. It's a perfect amalgamation of just really the surface of what you need to know
Yeah.
about Black history and filmography.
Is
And
that
this
black
isn't
enough
that.
for you, for our audio listeners?
Yes, is that black enough for you? It plays as a video essay doc. I would say March on Rome, which we covered from Chicago, and several other docs that we've covered. You had mentioned you made the comparison to the folk horror doc. Um, I'm a big fan of these video essay docs because it's allowing you a budget, the access to these talking heads, the footage to be able to look back at this moment in time and see the ripple effects to where it's led now. Stand out. Highly recommended, just like Zach did last week, over
Yeah.
on Netflix.
We got a question on last week's stream about whether or not this documentary spoils a lot of the movies they mention, and there are maybe some spoilers for the films that are referenced, but I think for the most part they're either talking about movies that most people don't really have on their watch list. They're trying to create kind of like a new canon for a lot of people, and in the other aspect, like I think where they do choose to spoil some things are only things that might motivate you to go see those movies too. They're talking about exclusively films from the late 60s and early 70s pretty much, so it's also not like they're spoiling stuff that just came out. They're spoiling stuff that's been sitting there, and if you didn't go see it yet, maybe this is the thing that will motivate you to go see those movies.
I agree with you. It is spoiling them though. I've always had this with Fight Club. In mentioning the context of Fight Club, you're spoiling Fight
Yeah.
Club, but you kind of need the context. So the question is, not everyone could have caught these movies. What if this is the first one you're watching and you're in college, right? That's the one that I've always been back. Yes, they've always been sitting there, but have they always been sitting there for you when you're this young?
Right.
But are we going to dismiss some spoilers to really get into the heart of what needs to be discussed? Yeah,
Right.
I won't have the answer to that. I make spoiler videos for a living. It's something I've always had to deal with as well, but I think it's okay. I don't think it ruins the movie. Does it spoil? Slightly. It doesn't ruin the movie. In fact,
Totally.
it makes this movie so much better. Pepsi, Where's My Jet? Quick little doc, not really quick, 4 parts about this guy who realized, yo, Pepsi's giving out a jet. All you have to do is collect these points. And they didn't put the asterisks. So I can win this jet just by collecting the amount that I need to. It reminds me of McMillions, the way that they were able to put McMillions together and do this whole scheme in order to be able
Yeah.
to get all of the Monopoly pieces. It also comes from the director who did the Von Dutch docu-series over on Hulu. So he likes
Oh.
seeing companies who do bad things. And Pepsi, well, yeah, Pepsi doesn't have a good run when it comes to ads. It's a really interesting doc. It's surprisingly produced by Theo James. I would have never thought that
Huh.
Theo James, yeah, time traveler himself, would be producing stuff. But hey, he's on board here, pushing this movie, and I'll just say that Part 4 took me to a place where I was not expecting. Part 4 has a cameo and goes to a completely different country, and it just like really broadens the scope of the false and really prying marketing that a lot of these big corporations do. So if that intrigues you, not as good as McMillions, but still a very interesting story. If you like the menu, may I recommend Love Charlie, The Rise and Fall of Chef Charlie Trotter. He's here from Chicago.
Wow.
He used to do a lot of very fascinating stuff. This is his story of all of the ups and downs that he did. As a chef, I'm pretty sure he'd look back and be like, you guys are missing a couple of little ingredients here and there. But it's a good little recap because we first learned a lot about him here in one of the museums. That showcased a lot of his culinary skills and him being one of the first Michelin star people here, I think, or I think the thing was that he never got it when he wanted it. But I think it's a very, very good doc about one of the most prolific chefs. My Old School, we had recommended earlier
Yeah.
in the year. It played at Sundance, and we had said that this is one of those movies where the entire thing is done from the perspective of what am I blinking on his name right here? What's our actor's name?
Alan Cumming?
Alan Cummings. He was
Yeah.
supposed to play him at one point. It never came to fruition. So now he gets to voice him for the doc. So you never see this guy. And the whole thing is about this student who looked different, but they never showcased the student. I've seen a lot of fake reviews up on Hulu or up on Letterboxd that didn't finish this movie. So I implore people, if you do catch this on Hulu, finish it, because in watching the whole thing, it makes you rethink all of it and all the interactions that these kids had. Up on Hulu. And finally, I Am Vanessa Guillen. It's a story recapping her family's struggle to try to find justice for a lot of the soldiers who find themselves in a lot of incidents in where when they're getting investigated, the people who get to spearhead those what's it called, those cases are the
Those
people who are committing them.
investigations,
Yeah. So it's a doc that
yeah.
profiles her story,
This was also
and
one
it
of the
was
top
trending through the
trending
week.
movies on Netflix. Yeah.
Easily. I mean, they really break down how it was through social media that they were able to get a lot of the story out there because of the original I Am Vanessa Guillen hashtag. So
Right.
I'd put it on your radar because I feel like most people know about the story, but if you haven't, I think it does a really good job putting you in the perspective of her mother and her sister and what they did in order to get justice for her. And honestly, it's still ongoing. So uh, a lot of these docs out there may not be the most joyful things. Honestly, there's probably depressing elements to every single one of these docs, but nonetheless, really interesting docs that you can catch from the comfort of your own home as we move over to the TV of the week. Zach, there's new Teletubbies.
Man, you're putting all this children's entertainment. Like, are you trying to tell me something? You have
I sent Zach
news?
I sent Zach a list, and he's looking at this and he goes, Teletubbies, Blue's Clues. Boy, what are we doing this week? It's just the
Like,
new stuff that came out.
like, were
No
you
kids in the
stoned when you put
horizon,
the
Zach.
rundown together, or
No kids. It's Teletubbies. I figured it was one of the
yeah,
biggest releases of the week. I look at it and then I
right?
see that it's 25 episodes.
26.
So we both caught one apiece. It's cute. For those of you who have been hoping for your PBS days to come back and you don't have, I guess, an account over there, the Teletubbies are back on Netflix. That is it. That's all I got to say. That's the news. That's the report right there.
I feel like they've gotten a little bit more of some production value, some added production value since they made the jump over to Netflix. There's maybe a little bit of CGI that they're using, but not a whole lot. I definitely feel like it's solid material for when you've had a few edibles, unless you have kids. But really, the thing is, like, Netflix is trying to compete with Disney Plus for favorite babysitter status, right? Like, you got your Blueies, and then you got your Teletubbies, and like
Cocoa Melons and yeah,
it's constantly in the top 10 on Netflix.
yeah. They're trying
So
to get that.
I it might not be for us, but there's a lot of parents and young children who I think will enjoy having it there. It's definitely a decent distraction. There's lots of nice sounds and pretty colors.
I was always a Wiggles guy myself, but I will say at least they've kept it consistent, right? Maybe it's not for you, but for the most part, when I went back to the Blues Clues stuff, they've changed the Blues Clues style, what I grew up with.
Right.
In like the old, they turned it into Coco Melon. And I'm like, no, what's the point of that? So at
Yeah.
least I guess the Teletubbies is not changing the formula too much. So if that was your comfort food for whatever reason, out on Netflix, you got, as I
Still
said,
there.
26 episodes to go for. The good thing on Netflix, though, is the series finale to Dead to Me, one of my favorite season ones when it premiered back in 2019. A lot has happened since then without getting into too many spoilers, but it's two women who weren't really friends and honestly have a lot to hate about each other coming together and going through this whole journey of crime, mysteries, syndicates, all of these various things. And season three, I think, knocks it out of the park in all cylinders, and I think was a great ending. It's able to bring both of these actresses together, still delivering the best punchlines that they possibly can. I would highly recommend reading up on Christina Applegate and talking about a lot of
Yeah.
the what has happened with her condition, and you see a lot of it at play in the series as well. But it doesn't like pause the series. They
Mhm.
the story still continues and they're able to just blend it in there. And I think season three really delivers. It's as good as season 1. I wasn't the biggest fan of season 2, but season 3 was just as good as season 1. I think was a good way to say goodbye to the show. This is one
Okay.
that, because it's only 3 seasons, I'm looking forward to rewatching in the future. Yeah, it's one of my go-tos on Netflix. Dead to me.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to keep going with it because I'm only 4 episodes into that final season, and I'm feeling like it's a little more on season 2 level of quality.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
the show. I feel like the show has twisted itself into so many knots that it's a little bit hard to keep things straight anymore.
Yes.
And it's
Kind of.
long for me. It left the realm of like I gotta watch the next episode binge style television, and it feels more firmly in the world of soap opera right now. And it's
Yeah.
elevated because it's got Christina Applegate and I uh
Linda
uh
Cardinal
what
Looney.
yeah, Linda Carlie. For a second I was like, is Linda her name or Linda her character name? It's like about to
Yeah. Might as well be. But
Judy.
I feel you
They're
because
so
I
good and
connect to them.
charismatic that
Yes.
I can just watch them like act through any scene, even if it's like a boring scene. They'll make
Yeah.
it fun and interesting. But when we just talk about like all the twists and all the bending over backwards the story has to do to try and keep the momentum going forward, that I'm a little bit run out of I've run out of energy for that stuff at
Yeah.
least.
But I still like them. I agree with you. I'm
Yeah,
not there for the story anymore as much as I'm just hanging out with them. So for that, it's also one of
that's
the big
fair.
reasons why I'm looking forward to revisiting it. If it was just a story,
Right.
I would know the beats, but I really just love them and their friendship together. So
Yeah,
that's
they're great.
season 3. On Hulu, though, there was a little show that is premiering on a weekly basis, and it's got 2 out so far. A miniseries called Fleishman Is In Trouble. You listen to the
Yeah.
podcast. I've seen the first 2 episodes. It's Jesse Eisenberg getting a lot of booty. He gets a divorce. He realizes, look at these apps, and he's able to go
Yeah.
crazy. It's beautifully shot, great acting. But what I love the most
Nice.
about it is that after his divorce, he's rekindling his friendships with what am I blanking on? Adam Brody and Lily Kaplan. They're the best part of the show. I love seeing I
Nice.
love just seeing them talk in diners. What they're able to just like go off of each other, and honestly, it's because they're all 3 of them are Jewish that they get into these pockets that only they can, having that same like the cultural similarities. They knock it out of the park. They're the reason why I'm looking forward to catching this on a weekly basis, which I was not
Mhm.
expecting to do. But how is the podcast? Because had no
Well,
idea this was based off a podcast. It seems like this man
it's
only
a
works on
novel.
stuff. Okay, seems like this man only works on audiobooks.
Yeah. Well, it's a novel written by Taffy Brodesser Ackner. And I
Okay.
think it was on a lot of best novels of 2020 lists. I saw it was all those like New Yorker recommends and stuff like that. It's on all of those lists. I've been seeing people bubble up and saying they really enjoyed the book. So I downloaded the audiobook, just my preferred method for reading quotation marks. But like right off the bat, it's really got that neurosis kind of energy. It feels a lot like When You Finish Saving the World, the Jesse Eisenberg podcast that we listened to, and also was adapted into a movie. So like right away, you can kind of tell that Jesse Eisenberg is like a perfect fit for this this character. But I really appreciate all the details that are put into the books. It's one of those books that's like very acutely observes characters down to like their fashion and hairstyle choices and what that says about their personalities. And I'm curious how some of that stuff ends ultimately translates into the book. Even you mentioned that he's like on the apps, he's dating lots of women. That's something that the book starts out with, and so much of that are these like very funny lists of adjectives and like montages of women. And I feel like there's a way to just directly translate that to the screen that would be really fun. So you saying that you like it so far makes me more excited for it. I'm trying to listen to the audiobook before I start the series, but I don't know, I'm
Interesting.
running out of time.
All right, I'll do it in reverse. Well,
Yeah.
you still got time. It'll be weekly, but
Yeah.
what you said sounds like they go into a little bit more detail. It's cool how they do it in the show. What you're describing sounds a little bit more fascinating, so I'm excited to catch that. But
Very cool.
Flashman's been pretty good. I was not
Nice.
expecting to like it as much as I have, but I would recommend it. Put it on your radar over on Hulu through their FX thingy that they've got going. I guess that just means
Cool.
it's not. That means it's got a little extra stamp of approval, I suppose.
Right.
Ziwe has come back for season
Yeah.
2. B, I think, because it's still kind of like the same episodes. But
Yeah.
this time around, she's got the most recent one has been with Saturday Night Live. He does the news.
Michael Shea.
Michael Che. You know, she's undefeated. Was
Yeah.
undefeated until last season's episode against the boy, Broad City comedian, own right, took down Cosby single handedly. Some would say. What's his
Oh,
name?
Hannibal.
I'm sorry, but Hannibal Buress went 1-0 on that one. That's on me. I know people were split, but if you're taking it to Twitter and people are split, hey, at minimum it's a tie.
On your own show.
On your own show, she wins the one against Uncut Gems.
Oh, Julia Fox. Yeah.
Yeah, she mopped her. That's easy. That's easy. That's an easy one to do. But
Yeah.
getting Michael
That's
Che on there,
batting practice for
yeah,
Ziwe.
when Michael Che came on there, I don't know. If your guest has your own crew laughing a little bit more than your own jokes, ooh, you're getting in a little trouble. But look, I love that she's going out of her comfort zone to have some people in
Right.
here who are going to push her back. That's what you need. She does win
She
it,
has-
in my opinion.
Yeah.
As my judge,
She has the
I do
most
think she wins it.
entertaining. She has the most entertaining interviews in late night right now.
Easily, because she's willing to
Yeah.
push the buttons. It doesn't feel like this pre-rehearsed thing in order to push somebody. If you want to be there to push the book, Radajowski, then they're going to go through every single up and down in your social media history and whatnot. You do not need Showtime to watch this. In fact, Showtime is so dumb that you can catch these episodes before they hit Showtime on Sundays on her freaking YouTube channel on Fridays.
I don't get
So
it.
that's my recommendation. Don't get Showtime. Just watch it there because it's even the better parts. You stick to just the interviews there. So Ziwe, she's been hilarious. There are sometimes where she loses, but for the most part, she comes in and is always able to do something creative with it. Catch her on her YouTube channel so you
Yeah.
can save some money. But finally, the last thing that we have right here is the biggest release of Netflix this week, a whole series from the creators of Dark, 1899. I think we're
I know
both,
you were excited for this one.
you know I was excited for this
Yeah.
one. I'm not done with it because I want cut everything else before this is the one that I sit down and truly consume. And I'm in the
Yeah,
midst of
it's-
consuming this crazy
it's-
story, right?
It's dense. I don't think this is like
Beautiful.
the kind of show where you want to watch 10 hours in a row.
You can't. And
Yeah.
it's not just people who have made like a really complex story in the 3 seasons that they did with Dark. Netflix said, "Hey, who do you want from like all of the series that we've had here?" And they collected people from everywhere. This is a show that has some people from Elite, so they're speaking Spanish. You got the people who are speaking different languages, people speaking Mandarin, people speaking English. It's insane. This is like what we
Yeah.
always say, why doesn't a show go all out and do this? They
Mhm.
have. The sets are crazy, the VFX work, all of these little intricacies here and there, this mystery that's happening with all these people on the ship. And then it's released this weekend that Netflix may have stolen this from someone who wrote a comic, a graphic novel in Brazil back in 2016, showed it to everybody, and has piece by piece kind of shown that it may be plagiarism. Now, mind you, a lot of it has to do with the ending of it, so I kind of got the ending to this spoiled for me in reading that. But in that discussion, it's been interesting to see a lot of people defend it from Brazil. Only for me to click on these influencers and realize that they in the pockets of Netflix. So Zach, I don't know what to make of that. But how has the show been for you so far?
So I'm only 3 episodes deep, so probably not even as far as you are. It is very intriguing. It's got a real assuredness in its tone. Like I feel like they absolutely know what they're doing, even if I don't know what they're doing yet. Right?
They're good at that, yeah.
Yeah. And it's pulling me along. It leaves you a trail of breadcrumbs that looks appetizing enough that you want to see where it goes. I don't know if those payoffs are going to really hit, but I really do appreciate, like you mentioned, that sort of eclectic nature of the cast. There's hardly a country in Europe not represented somewhere in this cast. Germans, Spanish people, Polish people, all sorts of people. And I think it's just there's an interesting mix of agendas going on here.
Yes.
They've really set themselves up well for whatever is going to happen next. And maybe they fumble it by the end, but so far I'm on board, and I want to find out what's going on. What's on that ship?
It's fantastic. I'm halfway through, but like I said, I kind of got some of it spoiled for me, and it just makes it. I'm very curious to see how they're gonna stick that landing. Yeah, I would highly recommend this. I would recommend Dark, and I would recommend the graphic novel. To leave it up to people to decide on whether it is a lot like it or not. So we'll see how that develops. But for the most part, I would put this on your radar because to me, this was the biggest release of the week in terms of what I was most anticipating. So much so that I'm still saving a little bit. And as soon as we're done here, I'll be continuing those episodes. But
Nice, nice.
that's everything for TV. Before we move on to the new to see and our recommendations, Zach, shout out all of the Patreons.
Yes, we got to give a shout out to the Intercutie Plus patrons, those wonderful people who support our show. They are Ewan, Julieta, Garrett, Tim, Elizabeth, Josh, Michael, Matt, and Mr. Kobayashi. We also have Academy level members, and they are Tushar, Marion, Cademan, Connor, Pete, Sean, May, Ricky, and What's Matta. And of course, the biggest thanks goes to our producer level patrons. They are Awkward and You Den Veer. Thanks
Appreciate
again
y'all.
for all the support you do. And a reminder that you too can become part of the Intercutie team over at patreon.com/intercutpod, where you can sign up for patron benefits like early access to Intercut episode outlines, access to private channels on the Intercut Discord, a sneak peek at some of our Intercut episodes before we release them to the public, and of course, the invitation to our monthly patron Google meetings. We had a really fun hangout with the patrons last week, talking about some of our favorites of the year so far, and always just catching up on the latest we've been watching. So please head over to Patreon and support the show if you're enjoying our podcast.
Beautiful. Now, Zach, Thanksgiving weekend. We've been lucky enough to see everything that's on the horizon. What are
Mhm.
your picks for the week?
Oh man, I mean, without becoming like a broken record and just repeating all the same picks over and over again, I'll give a couple picks that are not necessarily ones we've talked about too much on the show. The
Okay.
Swimmers, one of the movies that I highlighted during our TIFF coverage, is going to be on Netflix. I want to say tomorrow, and this is a really,
Ooh.
really interesting, true story about a pair of Syrian sisters who uh, who become refugees and immigrate to Europe in search of an escape from the civil war that is tearing up their home. And they also go from becoming refugees to Olympic athletes. And it's one of those true stories that's almost so unbelievable that you
Oh, true
wouldn't
story.
believe it if it was a film, except it's a film, and I kind of believed it now. Um, there's elements of it that are maybe a little bit standard sports story, but there's
Uh-huh.
also elements of it that I think are really profound and moving. Some of the visuals that they create during the immigration sequence are seared in my brain. They're very haunting. A particular image about of life jackets is just so. If that doesn't just break your heart, then you might need to check it out and get it fixed. There are really beautiful highlight moments in this film, even if overall it's mostly solid, not spectacular. But yeah, The Swimmers, I would recommend people check that one out now that it's available on Netflix.
Sounds good.
Another streaming recommendation, Nanny, is going to be available on Amazon Prime. This is the Sundance Grand Jury Prize winner from earlier this year. Josu is the director and does a phenomenal job of weaving in these elements of folk horror into the story of a woman who's an immigrant and nannying for a upper class family in New York, and just the sort of like mix of like microaggressions that she deals with and larger like societal pains that are
Hmm.
on her shoulders given her position. There's just something very haunting to how the story is told, and it's also gorgeously filmed. Yeah, it's one of the movies from Sundance that really stuck with us, I feel like. So
Yeah.
I
Alina
would
really
definitely
liked
give
it
her a
too.
yeah, I'd give a strong recommendation to Nanny now that it's going to be available on Amazon Prime Video.
Nice.
Over in theaters, because it doesn't hit Netflix until later this year, unfortunately. But if you are in a city, you should be able to check out White Noise this Friday, the latest from Noah Baumbach. Maybe Noah Baumbach's funniest movie, certainly his most absurd, the story of a Hitler studies professor and his and his family's various existential crises. Adam Driver, so good in this movie. Greta Gerwig, amazing in this movie. Don Cheadle, hilarious. One of the funniest performances I've seen this year. I've seen it twice. I loved it both times, and I want to see it a third time. So,
You know it's good when Zach's seen it 2 times in theaters before it's in theaters.
exactly. Give a quick shout out to Nope, because this is on both of our lists of the best movies we've seen this year, and
Yeah,
it
I've
is
seen it a
going to
couple
be
times.
available. It's going to be available on Peacock.
Already is.
Already available for streaming on Peacock. So if you didn't want to go to the movie theater and you didn't want to spring for a VOD purchase, maybe you got somebody who's got a Peacock login
Someone's
that you
got
can borrow and check out
Xfinity
one of the
account,
year's
something.
best movies.
Easily. And on top of that, they did a really cool thing in adding the 56-minute featurette that came with the Blu-ray, and they actually added it there so you can see the whole making of, which I think it's fantastic. It's profound. So
Very cool.
Nope. Double up on that one too.
Yeah. The Menu is probably one of the more entertaining movies in wide release. We talked about it a little bit earlier. We might talk about it a little bit more later. But I really like The Menu as well. And then one more pick, the only one of these picks that I haven't seen yet. It's Welcome to Chippendales, the long gestating series that at one point I think was supposed to star Dev Patel. Eventually it's worked its way to Kumail Nanjiani, and the reviews far are pretty solid on this one. The story of the rise of the male dancer Chippendales company. And yeah, it seems like a kind of different role for a guy that I find very charismatic, Kumail Nanjiani. So I'm curious to check this one out on Hulu.
All right, and I know we got the screeners for them, so
yeah,
there should be something to dig into. All right, we'll see. It's gonna be airing weekly, it seems. So have that on your horizon. For me, I'm going to go with all the theatrical stuff first. If you want to go out with your family and want to watch something a little different, I think one of the most interesting picks of this week is Bones and All. Go in knowing little as possible if you can, but maybe you read the book, and hopefully it does it justice because Luca comes in reuniting himself with Timothy Chalamet, but with a standout performance from Taylor Russell. As two couples who hit the road and chew on as much as they possibly can. Mark Rylance is a standout for me, though, in this one. I am looking for a supporting nomination easily for Mark Rylance. He was scary, bro. I was thinking back to this movie, and I didn't realize how scary it was. Carson had made a video earlier, and I was like, you know what? It was kind of scary for no reason whatsoever. So I think it's a very effective movie, and I think because you have someone like Timothy on there, they say there's no movie stars nowadays, but I'm looking at one right here, Bones and All. Check this one out for the performances alone, but I think it's a story that is going to stick with a lot of people for sure. Glass Onion, I know you got to catch back. That is not Glass Onion. That is also Bones and All. Glass Onion, you were able to catch over at TIFF. Big release for it. We haven't talked since I've seen it, but Zach, this is awesome. Glass Onion is fun. It's so cool. It's going to be on Netflix, but it has that theatrical release that we've been saying is so awesome because Netflix doesn't get the time of day at AMC and Regals, and something happened. The gods have come together, and they're going to make it happen for 1 week. It is worth catching in the theater with everybody and their different reactions. It's funny seeing how people caught on to certain things early and not, and just the flips and twists and turns. This is a movie where it wants you to know that there's going to be a twist so that it could twist your twist and conception. It is fantastic. Ryan Johnson is a person who, if I disagreed with this man, I'd never tell it to him in public. I've seen this man get he is the epitome of the person who has dealt with so much flack on the internet. And look at him on the other side still thriving. I've seen this man rebuttal with people. They say never respond to people. But damn, if you've ever gotten a response from Ryan Johnson, I have seen him school people. This man, he knows his stuff through and through. And this is the epitome of that movie. We have seen so many films that are trying to do something different in the genre, right? We're just discussing some in this podcast alone. He knows the genre, the murder mystery element that he's in, and he knows how to play with that to a new degree. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. I can't wait to see this one again. I took out my Knives Out one. I'm rewatching and going through all the stuff that he did there. He knocks it out of the park with this one too. Who was yours? Who was your favorite in this one?
I mean, I always love the boy Edward, but
He's good.
I mean, Kate gets the fun part.
Kate Hudson is the standout of this movie.
Yeah.
Was out of pocket, unbelievable. This is a spoiler talk that we're gonna have to get into. Kate Hudson killed it in this movie. I want Kate
The
Hudson as a
pants
supporting.
joke, just the pants joke
Alone.
is enough.
Yeah. This is a great movie from Ryan Johnson. It delivers on all cylinders. Catch it in theaters if you can.
Star Wars fans don't know how good they had it. Would you say you preferred Glass Onion to Knives Out? Or
I don't care.
You still like Knives Out one more?
They're even to me.
Okay.
I will give you an answer by the end of this year, but the fact that they're that close, I'm just gonna bask on the fact that I'm so appreciative of getting these stories. Oh, by the way, what's the title of the movie? In the movie? Just Glass Onion. I love that. Not a Knives Out mystery or anything like that. He knows exactly what he's doing out there. I can't wait to see more of these. Give me more and more and more and more and more. Saint Omer. I don't know how the release is going to be for this one. It might be limited, but this was my favorite movie out of the New York Film Festival. It's not going to be for everybody because it's so slow, but it is a trial of a woman who reportedly, allegedly, supposedly murdered her infant child.
Yeah.
And it's all of the intricacies that come with that. It is one of the best screenplays. It's a very patient movie, but it has some of the best performances and one of my favorite shots, a stare of all time. Saint Omer, if you can catch it in theaters. Some of you may need it at home. I think it's worth catching in theaters. A decent little pick right here would be Devotion. I know this isn't going to be a standout movie, but this is exactly what you would take, like, I don't know, your grandpa to. There are a lot of people who are not going to be going into Glass Onion or the menu and figuring out these little intricacies of classes, whatever else. Sometimes your grandpa just needs a movie like this. Right? And it delivers on what it needs to be. It is the story, the real life story of a Navy fighter pilot and his story of being one of the first very decorated black pilots in history. Jonathan Majors delivers. I have a whole Q&A that I want to post up from Chicago Fest. That makes me like the movie more than the movie stands on its own, if that makes any sense. So I think it's worth catching in theaters. I don't think you will be bored by it, even if it is by the numbers, but that's exactly what I think older generations need. So giving you a whole plethora of different movies to catch in theaters. Devotion. Saint Omer for the artsy fans. Glass Onion for the mystery fans. Bones and All for you thirsty little buggers out there. And then all of Zach's picks. For the thirsty people at home, you can watch Chippendales. For, honestly, everybody, a thriller. The Menu. Nope, at the comfort of your own home. The comedy that is White Noise. The mystery thriller that is Nanny.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one. The Swimmers. I had reached out for the Swimmers.
Inspirational sports doc. Yeah.
Inspirational sports doc that's there. But I would also throw as a final little thing, Everything Everywhere All at Once has not streamed anywhere, and it will be coming to Showtime. It will be the streaming release. So if you want to stay at home and watch one of the best movies of the year, get a free Showtime subscription. But other than that, that's all of the stuff that we have this week on Intercut. Zach, give them the outro.
Well, that's all for this week's edition of Weekend Must Watch. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich. That's ZShevich. And check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Artwork and people find more from you.
You can find me over at Elmi Explain on Twitter, on YouTube, on Letterboxd, or every week here on the Intercut podcast.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast. And then don't just listen to the audio feed, but subscribe to our video feed as well on youtube.com/intercutpod, where you can catch our bright smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of the Weekend Must Watch streaming every Monday. And please leave a comment, like the video. Consider heading over to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. Shout out to our listeners in Nigeria and the Philippines for putting us on the TV and film podcast charts out there. You know, we need a couple more of those 5-star reviews. We Rotten Tomatoes wants some of those to
I'll
put
take a 1-star. Give us a 2-star. Just give us the traction. Yeah. Zach wants the 5.
I mean, I kind of want. I'd prefer the 5 if we're being real honest, but
I prefer y'all listening. I appreciate that alone.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, the Patreon. All of them are at Intercut Pod, and you can get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from all the guests we feature here on Intercut. And also check out the link to our Discord in the description for this episode and join the conversation all week long. But thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, sweatpants. That's all I got.